Hey, it's Andrew here, and welcome to the eCommerce Fuel Podcast, the show dedicated to helping 7 and 8 figure brand owners build incredible businesses and amazing lives. Steve, welcome to the show, sir.
What's up, man? I'm surprised we're actually recording because I thought you just put words in my mouth like you did in the keynote for ECF. Just make me say
No,
whatever you want.
no, I mean, I don't know if you can help us build an incredible business or an amazing life, either or, but I wouldn't, even with all the doubt that is there, I wouldn't put the words in your mouth on like a recorded episode. That was like 300 people. I mean, I'd hate to do that to a larger audience too.
You know what's funny is I went and tried to do that for my own voice so I could
Yeah.
potentially just put out a podcast without talking, but it
Yeah.
didn't come out
Well,
as good as
quickly,
yours.
can you tell people for people who weren't at the event, what you're talking about here?
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
Udarian always pranks me some way or another, and I always prank him on my event. So what he did is he put these foul words in my mouth and made it sound like I said all these things in a recording in front of everyone at ECF. I don't even remember what was said now, but I was making
You,
fun of myself.
you make it sound like you're just like spewing, expletives, gangster rap stuff left and right. It was just, you were just apologizing for all the horrendous things you've done over
Yes.
the years. And the fact that you have never apologized to anyone in your whole life, I think was what was so startling to yourself and everyone there. So, but,
But it
but you,
was a
so
good
you
prank.
tried
Yeah.
the voice, you tried to use the voice kind of simulator. It didn't work as well.
I did actually. I tried to make it so that, I could put out individual podcasts without actually having to record. I could just type it all out, which would have made it a lot easier. But it didn't sound nearly as natural. So maybe I can get some tips from you on how to imitate my voice later.
You can get tips from me on how to imitate your voice.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
With AI or whatever you used. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, thanks for coming on. I mean, people, for everyone listening, a lot of times we'll come in with like a very hard agenda with an episode, somebody's story, a tactic, something like that, and have a few things I want to talk about with Steve. But I just always enjoy connecting with you, Steve, despite all the crap I give you publicly behind closed doors. I'll admit to people, and maybe for the first time here publicly, that you're a really good guy and just fun to hang out with. And wanted to do an episode to catch up on a few things, talk through a few things that I think that you do that are super impressive, but a little bit more of a fun, casual episode, which I'm looking forward to. So you just got back. You just got back. You kind of came on, looked a little weary. You've got a tennis coach, right? Like you had a
I
tennis
do.
lesson this morning. How long have you been doing this
Thursday
for?
mornings. I've been taking tennis lessons with a private coach for probably over a year, although I had a little gap because my other tennis coach, apparently I drove him out of the state. He decided to move to Alabama, get away
You
from me.
didn't apologize for something that you did?
Hey, so you know what was funny about that coach was we had a deal where he gave my family free lessons and I helped him with his YouTube channel. And he's now making pretty good money on his YouTube channel and his virtual coaching that I helped him launch his product. So I'd say it was more than a fair trade.
That's so, man. This is you're just teeing this up for me so well, Steve. The two things I want to talk to you about today specifically are one, kind of fitness. Like you are 48, and like you're in good shape. Like you're strong, you're active. I think most men your age would be very excited to be in the shape that you're in. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But we'll talk about that in a minute. What I think is more interesting is your frugality, right? Like you are right, like successful entrepreneur, have done well, but still very frugal, right? Like you're taking tennis lessons, and a lot of times I'll be talking to you, and you're like, "Oh, you should try this out." And I was like, "Oh, how much is it a month?" And you're like, "I don't know. I just was able to like negotiate this deal, free exposure for this, or like tennis, right? Like you're trading the lessons for that, which I give you a lot of crap about. But also growing up with those same kind of roots and having them myself, I secretly admire, even though I don't say that very often. So like the tennis thing, have you always like, did you grow up in a really frugal family?
We did. Yeah. I mean, it might be cultural. I don't know. But yeah, we always, okay. So here, let's do a little quiz here.
Yeah.
Did you wash plastic bags in the dishwasher for reuse?
we we were pretty frugal. We were not that frugal. No, no.
Actually, I take that back. We didn't even use a dishwasher. We washed everything by hand and used it as a drying rack. But we would wash our plastic bags. We would wash our plastic utensils. So if you consider that frugal, then yes. I
Yeah.
grew up in a frugal
Did
house.
you have a dishwasher and your parents just wouldn't let you use it? They're like,
We
just
just It's just a cultural thing. Asians
okay.
do not use dishwashers.
Interesting. So, like, I remember growing up, we weren't washing plastic bags, but I remember growing up and being in third grade, and I went to third grade with a Miss Piggy pink lunchbox, and I got teased about it. And I asked my mom, "Why did you get this specific lunchbox for me?" And she's like, "Well, it was the one that was like I got 50 cents at this garage sale. It was just what was there. Like, what's wrong with it?" And I was like, "Well, kind of some boys are teasing me a little bit." And she's like, "Well, are you a boy?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, just tell them you're a boy. I don't see what the big problem is." And sent me back to school with the Miss Piggy lunchbox, which probably was like the right move to do, right? In retrospect. So we grew up very, and bought a lot of things used, but not quite to the same degree that you did. So, but like you think, I mean, I look at it as a huge asset as you get older, and just throughout life. And I would imagine you look at it the same way, right?
I mean, I'm not as frugal as I used to be now, but there's some things you just can't overcome from childhood.
What are the things that what are the things that, if I had to have one of the two problems, both can be too problematic, right? Like you can be way too frugal, way too spending. If I had to have one of the two issues, I'd rather be more on the frugal side than more on the, just free spending side, because I'll get you in trouble faster. What do you feel like you wish you could spend more money on than you do? And what do you feel like you're really glad that you're still fairly cost conscious about?
I mean, to be straight up, these days, I know what I like, and I'm willing to spend money on what I like, and then I just save on the stuff that doesn't really matter to me. So, for example, I've been known to spend like $7,000 on NBA Finals tickets, right? And that seems like a total waste of money. Like it's just one night, one game, and I go to multiple, and Warriors just happened to be good for many years, so I was going to games every year. And every time I tell my wife, "Hey, this is just a once in a lifetime opportunity. I better take advantage of this."
You can do that about 3 times, maybe twice.
But on the flip side, the other stuff that I skimp on in a lot of, I can't even think. I mean, I skimp on most other things because just they don't matter to me. Like, for example, I don't care about cars. Obviously, you don't either because I've seen yours. Just kidding. I love
Hey,
that
hey,
thing.
hey, hey, hey. No, they're pretty. We drive a 1990 and a 2011. Yes, they are definitely not new model vehicles.
And I splurge on food because I like food. But for the most part, like clothing, for example, I wear the same stuff all the time. I don't spend that much money on clothes or shoes or anything like that. So it's just a matter of figuring out what you want and what you like and what makes you happy.
Yeah, I mean, but in retrospect, looking back at those finals purchases, do you have any regrets about pulling the
Oh,
trigger on those
not at
tickets?
all, man.
Yeah.
Those are memories that I'll remember those games forever, including the one where I took my kids. I was so pissed, actually. I took my kids to the conference finals against the Rockets, and because they were into basketball, we'd watch the games together. But all they did was fight the entire time. They didn't really watch the game, and then I let them bring iPads just in case, and it was just a colossal waste. So never again, never again.
Your kids were on iPads at an NBA semifinal game?
They
Oh,
were. I
Steve.
brought those just in case for the car ride, so they weren't fighting. This is when they were a lot younger, obviously.
They were doing
But
Russian math on the iPads at least, right?
I
At the
mean,
game.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they were studying for the SATs, but didn't have to happen at the game, just on the car ride. So.
Man, are you like is Jen, and I don't want to pull her into this unnecessarily. So feel free to tell me to take a hike and or edit as need be. But are you guys? Do you have the same kind of sense of frugality or what you spend money on? Like, are you kind of aligned on those things you don't spend money on or you do spend money on?
I think Jen is actually more frugal than I am. She will spend like the entire week trying to save like I don't know, like $30 on her vacation or on a flight.
Hmm.
And I think she enjoys it though. So I appreciate it. She always finds like the optimal flight, the optimal hotel, but she literally spends like every minute of every day thinking about it when she's planning a vacation.
Hmm. I mean, how do you think this has helped you in or hurt you in business? Because like early on, it's super helpful. And I consider myself reasonably frugal, but I'll tell you some of the things I spend on like we're talking about SEO investment or other things the other day. And I think like your head just about exploded when I told you how much I'd spent over the last seven months
Oh
on
yeah, I know.
SEO.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but at some point too, like you can also handicap your growth, right? Like you will do, like I know on your side, and this is something I might diverge a little bit. Like if you need an app, like if there's an app that will do something that's like $30 a month, like you hate recurring fees, I know.
I do.
And so if there's an app that's like, even if it's $15 a month for an app, if you can code it up in 7 or 8 hours, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you'll code it up and do that as opposed to spend the $150 per year to have it done, kind of thing. So like, do you ever feel like
that is correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it probably handicaps me. It probably does. But so one thing that I always optimize for is sleeping at night. And the problem is when you're using all these disparate apps from different companies, they change over time and they upgrade. You have a WordPress blog, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every time there's something to upgrade, like every 2 months or every month. And invariably, whenever I hit that upgrade button, something goes wrong. And when you have like Tony, who's a mutual friend of ours, she's got like 60 plugins on her site. Like whenever she upgrades, it's like a colossal mess. So for me, like I want to be the owner of the code so that in case something happens, I have the option and I'm in control of the upgrade path. So it's more than just the money. The money is true, and I enjoy the coding part of it. But I just don't want one day I hit the upgrade button and stuff stops working and I have to contact someone else for help. I
But
want
I
to be
mean,
self-sufficient. Yeah.
aren't you still going to have those issues though? Like APIs change, things change, and now that just changes the maintenance threshold from someone else to you.
That is correct. So I have the perfect example because I literally just spent the last 2 weeks upgrading my shopping cart to PHP 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
That only happens though like every 5 years, and I can handle that. And we just talked about payment processing. I just recently switched to payment processor because I'm not really using a supported cart. I had to code the API and stuff for that. But the thing about tools is, especially important ones, the API doesn't really change because the thing about it, if you're using a payment processor and they decide to change the API and deprecate one, they're putting like thousands of businesses that they're forcing them to upgrade. So it actually does not occur very often. This is the first time I've actually switched payment processors. And I've been in business this is our 17th year.
Got it. How much are you using, a little side question, but just out of curiosity, are you using ChatGPT a lot for writing these PHP codes? Because I'm guessing you're doing most of this in PHP for your site. Like, is it I've been very tempted to start using that more because I have a coding background, been out of it for years, but the ability to hop in, type in English language and get a framework that I can customize for stuff just sounds so cool.
I use it very heavily now because what I'm weak at is the syntax, right?
Yes.
So I know what it needs to do. I can read it very well, but JavaScript and PHP, like the frameworks, sometimes I make an error here and there, but you can just have ChatGPT do it. And then you can, as long as you can read it, you can modify it to make it work. It saves a ton of time. Not only that, there's a lot of people that have just written code already. And let's say you don't understand it because, everyone writes code differently. You can actually have ChatGPT translate what each line of that code is doing to help you understand it.
That's super cool. I mean,
Yeah.
you're right. A lot of times it's just remembering the syntax, following the logic, not always, but following the logic is usually much easier than just bringing it out from scratch. So if you can get it to spit it out there. That's cool.
But
what
it hasn't made me a better coder, unfortunately. I think it degrades your skills when you do it that way. But hey, it's okay.
Well, but it also gives you like access. It exposes you to a lot, to maybe a larger breadth of code and different things and different ways to do things. So
yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think? Like everyone has their personal preferences, and so maybe some of these I'm going to caveat this with like, some people would say buying crazy expensive NBA finals tickets is just a colossal waste of time. So it's all relative to some degree. But what are the things that you see other people either in their business or their personal life spending money on that you're just like, it just makes you just drop to the floor?
Can we use you as an example?
Oh yes, I'm going to brace myself. I should have known this is a bad decision.
Well, I was just thinking about what you told me about SEO.
Yeah.
And we don't have to reveal how much you spent, but I thought it was an egregious amount of money for what it was, because. But here's the thing: like, this is one thing I admire about your personality. Is like when you're going to do something, you go all out and then you try to get the best people to do whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? And that's something that's not really in my personality to do. For example, when you redesigned right channel radios, you
Yeah.
hired Carson, right? And you
Right.
spent a lot of money, but what
Hmm.
came out of that was fantastic, right? I'm not sure if I could have made that same investment because I would have thought it was overpriced. So there's two sides of that coin.
Yeah. And on the SEO side, so it was like I think we got to reveal this now. Like it was a, kind of mid 5-figure investment over, let's say, a 6 month period between a lot of different sources. And so it was, yeah, probably upper 5 figures actually. And you're right. Like it was, it sounds like a lot, but I feel like the one thing that I have been trying to look at more and more is, one, there's only so far, like, I don't know. I feel like in my life, like time is so constrained. Like I have 3 kids, I have a family, I have a business I want to invest in, I have friends I want to invest in, I want to keep my health up. Like there's other things that are important to me. And even I feel like just the older you get, the more that you have on your plate, the more valuable time becomes. So if I can start spending that money on things that free up my time while driving results, like the threshold for that gets higher and higher and higher because of, just your time constraints.
I agree. I think the problem with that SEO investment is it's random, right? I think if I were in your shoes, and I don't know exactly what you did, to be honest with you. So if I were in your shoes and I had that budget, I would have just blanketed every single keyword and just tried to pump out as much content as possible, as opposed to I don't actually know how you spent the money, but I supposedly you hired a consultant, maybe did some on-site stuff. I would have just blanketed the internet with every sort of article. Uh,
Well, so we spent the money. It was a combination of kind of like contractors we were working very deeply with that were running point on things, of staff writers, like kind of writers that were writing per articles. So it was a combination. That was the majority of it. It was kind of
yeah.
writing, oversight, and strategy, things like that. Um, so what would your strategy have been? It would have been to just produce as many keywords as you could, low quality articles, and just kind of the shotgun approach.
Yeah, I would have taken the Spencer Hawes approach. I don't know if you're familiar with his experiment where he
Mm-mm.
tried to publish 1,000 articles in a year. He came close. He ended up publishing 900 and he grew his traffic by like 6x.
That's crazy. I mean, these were, I'm guessing, not crazy 5,000 word ultimate guide posts. These were more kind of surface level things.
Uh, I mean, they were long enough compared to the competition, let's just say. And they were just answering very specific questions that people had on the internet. Because when it comes to SEO, I mean, that's really all it's about. It's not about putting out necessarily a comprehensive guide. It's writing content that answers the question more thoroughly than anyone else on the front page.
Yeah, your approach has changed a lot, and your traffic has been going. But you don't like writing. You hate SEO now, don't you?
I do because of the way it's caused me to have to write. I used to enjoy writing. Remember back in the old days, this is how we met. We met through blogging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I remember reading one of your posts and I was like, hey, this is really well written. I liked how you incorporated like your experiences and all that stuff. And that's how I used to write. Unfortunately, that's not what ranks these days. Unfortunately, telling stories hurts you in the rankings. You just got to answer the question succinctly and thoroughly. And that's how you rank these days, which is taking all the fun out of writing.
Yeah. I mean, do you worry much about? I worry about this a lot from an SEO perspective, especially after the last 6 months. Like SEO has just gotten a lot because the writing that I think the reason that we had issues with the SEO. I think the team was putting out good content. Um, I think team was putting out great content. We had a good schedule, and it was on topic, right? Like we're trying to write very niche things that appealed to people who were in the trenches on e-commerce business. So it wasn't high level stuff. Excuse me, it wasn't. It was very long tail keywords, um, and so we weren't trying to rank for head terms. We were trying to rank for these longer term things. But man, just SERPs have gotten so much more competitive. It takes longer to rank up there, and I think just the landscape has made it significantly harder. And with AI coming in, with ChatGPT, with people's time, kind of their time and attention spans, I don't know. I've worried. It's the first time ever I've really worried, like, is SEO really even a viable strategy going forward in terms of everything that's at play? In 2 years, is it going to be something that is not going to have massive diminishing returns? So I don't know. You seem like you're still investing there, but I'm much more worried about it in the future than I ever have been.
I'm cautiously investing in it. And for you, I probably wouldn't bother, right? I've been doing it for a long time, and as long as I'm profitable with my investments, I'm going to continue until it dies. And you're right. Maybe it only has 2 or 3 years left. This is why I'm focusing almost all of my efforts on video now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably why we're recording this episode. You used to not record your episodes, right?
Yeah,
On
totally,
video.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When you do podcasting, we're putting all of these, like we're building up an asset base and starting to drop these out soon. Doing like trailers, doing shorts, things like that, and also publishing the full episode. Have you seen traffic from publishing just full straight up podcast interviews on YouTube? Because
Yes.
you have. Okay.
Yes. I'm a little selective of which podcast I publish on YouTube because it has to match the audience that I've already built. For example, whenever I publish an e-commerce story, I have one video I think that has over 20,000 views, which for a podcast is fantastic. I think, because it's long form. You wouldn't think of people watching an interview on YouTube. But I also interviewed this guy who has 5 million subs on YouTube. He's very well known on YouTube. I thought that episode was going to do fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a good episode. But I put it out there. None of my audience was interested in a YouTuber, right? They want to learn more about e-commerce folks. So immediately I just kind of stopped publishing those types of interviews.
Interesting. So are you pretty hyper actively watching the analytics when you drop an episode? And if it's not performing well, you'll take it off the channel?
Oh yeah. So I watched that first hour like a hawk. And if it doesn't perform well in that first hour, I switch up the thumbnail. That's the first thing that I do.
Yeah.
And multiple times. I usually have like 2 or 3 backup thumbnails. And I just try to get my click-through rate, above 6 or 7% if I can, then just let it ride. Sometimes it just bombs though. And it can't be
Interesting.
helped. Yeah.
I'm guessing your thumbnails, you're looking like attention grabbing. Do you do the text like you've got a picture and then the text overlay? Is it usually like a big picture of like Steve's head with a very enticing caption, or what's your formula for
Yeah.
thumbnails?
So I don't know if this is the right thing to do for anyone listening out there, but I have my big middle-aged Asian face, and then a caption, and then I usually have some sort of image. So the combination of those 3. And I have this style now. Like if you see one of my thumbnails, you'll know it's me. I use this like kind of bright blue background. And that's the idea. Once you create a brand, they'll instantly recognize your thumbnails and want to watch your stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting, like branding there's so many different eras of the internet, right? Like for a while you had the era of you could sell stuff drop shipping, and then it got much harder, right? And then you could buy cheap traffic. That's getting much harder. And so we've had all these eras, and I feel like we're getting this era. For a while, I thought like investing in personal brand. I was like, I don't know if I want to invest in a personal brand deeply, because man, then the business is tied more to you. You're more responsible. It's harder for you to build a team. Like you can still build a team that supports you, but you still have to kind of show up. And not that it's not great to do that. I love having conversations. I love leading a community, but it makes a brand, I think, less, it's just more reliant on one person, like one point of failure. But I feel like going forward, my perspective on that has changed, where if we have a lot of AI coming in, if we have all the information is being synthesized, a really strong brand, you could also take this to the e-commerce side, like not even just an individual product, but a strong brand that stands for something, but also like the value of a personal brand online, I think is going to become more and more valuable in the future, because I think one of the reasons people like video is partially maybe because it's shorter, it's more concise, it's more stimulating, but also it's more personal. You can connect with people, kind of like what podcasting is. I think people are going to be less. You can get information anywhere. People want information. When I listen to podcasts, I listen to podcasts that not only deliver information, but like have very strong points of view, that have strong personalities, where I connect with the person. So I don't know if you're the same way, but my thought process on like investing in my personal brand going forward has really changed over the last 12 months.
I mean, I've always thought personal brand was important. And once again, I just optimize for sleeping at night, because no one can take away my brand from me, but someone could take over my e-commerce store, and knock me out. But even if someone were to just copy all the content that I had, I mean, I'm still the one delivering it, and I deliver it in my own way, and no one can copy that. So that's why I have those two things in my portfolio. I have the e-commerce store, and then I have the content side. But I think the content side is more defensible.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Going back to Frugality here for a minute before we change gears, have you read that Die with Zero book? I know a lot of more. It's gotten more popular the last year, but it kind of ties into our frugality discussion. Have you read that?
I have not read it, but I know the outcome of the book or the summary of the book, and it's my mom's philosophy basically.
It's your mom's philosophy.
It is, yes.
The same mother that raised you and was washing the plastic bags in the dishwasher, kind of thing?
Okay, so let me just outline the characters in my family here. So my mom was never frugal. She's the one. She
Oh,
kind of
okay.
grew up kind of wealthy, and so she just spend, spend, spend. My dad was very frugal, and they used to fight about these things. My grandma, who used to live with us, who helped raise me, she was the most frugal of all. She's the one who washed plastic bags. She's the one when we
Hmm.
went to the grocery store. I was only allowed to eat what was on sale. So those are the characters. Yeah.
I love that. This reminds me, we'd go to Wendy's growing up, and my mom would be like, "All right, kids, here's your $2 bills. Get whatever you want on the menu. You just get $2." Right? So that was how, like, and it was good. I think a lot of those things are. It sounds. I'm teasing her for it, but I'm very glad that she kind of did that. Anyway, I'm sorry, I interrupted your story about your family.
Well, no, I was just gonna say my mom, she spends every last dime that she makes. And she has that die with zero mentality. And I'm like, yeah, you should enjoy yourself. Spend every dime that you have. I don't need your money, I don't need inheritance or anything like that. So
Yeah, I think I read that book, and I thought it was really it was helpful for me to kind of start spending more on experiences. And that sounds cliche, and people always say that, like, hey, it's just spend on experiences that make you happier. But I really think they do. And I think, especially too, as you watch, we're going to talk about like the crisis of hitting 40, and like just hitting these milestones. You're like, oh, wow, like this life actually it's going faster than I thought. You see kids growing up, and you realize that the things that you value the most are some of those memories. And so I've gotten much better at spending probably on experiences, and also making like investments, I think, in personal life and business life that are going to pay off. But it's a really good book. I think the whole premise is, as you know, like for people who haven't heard it before, is there's no there's no there's no great reason to die with a bunch of money in the bank. Like if you want to, you should either spend it while you're alive. You should either give it to other people while you're alive because you'll be able to help them sooner, or one of those two things. And if you're going to give it to people in your family or charities, like the sooner you can give it to them, the better. And it made me think, like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So there's no real prize for winning money and handing it down. How do you think about money with your kids? Like, you've done well in business. You live in a fairly affluent area of the country, and I imagine too, especially like the comparisons with other families, even at the kid level, are tough. Like, how do you think about money with your kids and instilling like the values that you think are important monetarily wise in that environment?
yeah, I just want to add one thing about your die with zero analogy.
Yeah.
Um, for me, like just having money in the bank allows me to sleep at night with low stress. And so that's why I don't know if I could just give it all away early, because then I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I'd be worried about where the money is coming in. So it's like my insurance policy. And again, uh, you know, I agree with the book's principles, but for my
Yeah.
personality, like I like to see a balance in the bank.
His
That's
his, his
yeah.
counter argument to that, and I 100% understand where you're coming from. His counter argument would be just buy an annuity, like go buy something that guarantees you like a steady stream of income for life at what you need, and then your whatever you have on top of that, you can give away, spend, whatever. So
Yeah, that works too. That works too. Annuity just
yeah,
does not excite me at all though. But
I agree. Yeah, I hear you.
okay, so
Anyway,
on the
sorry.
kids
Yeah,
side,
kid front.
so I always tell them how spoiled they are, because mainly because we're always around too, and we just want to make sure that they know that this is not normal.
Yeah.
But we're having them work on businesses. So my daughter and my son, they started a t-shirt business when they were 9 and 11. That ended up making like $1,000 in their first couple months, which
That's awesome.
was fantastic. And then my daughter started her jewelry store. And then right now, and some of this has to do with getting to college and standing out, but she's starting a class now on how to sell on Etsy. And I got to admit, I mean, we're on this weekly schedule where she films one video a week, but it's kind of been a struggle because she's got to write the script, and it's got to be coming up with the outline was very painful also, because when you're a teenage kid, you don't know anything. Like, you just go and you sell something, and just formulating all that has been a struggle, but it's been rewarding at the same time. She's gotten a lot better at scripting things and recording videos, and I taught her how to edit videos. It's gone a little slower than I expect, but we should have a class out, and I think if she can make, I don't know, 100,000, that's a pretty good thing to put on your college resume, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that would stand out. There's very few kids that are making that. What are the businesses? Let's give them a shout out here. Like Corinne's
Oh,
business
yeah,
for
yeah.
What are they?
So the original website that my son and daughter started, it's Kid in Charge. They were selling entrepreneurship T-shirts that they were originally making by hand. We switched over to print on demand, and then they kind of lost interest in that over time. And then my daughter got into jewelry making, and her store is over at arenab.com, where she sells handmade jewelry, which then led to Etsy, which then led to this course. So it's kind of gone on a natural trajectory.
So Renabee, is that RENABEE.com?
It's REENABEE.
Got it. Renabee.com. Cool.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. How are you thinking about, like, when I think about paying for kids stuff, and especially college, do you have, how do you think about that? Like our kids, we spoil them probably with experiences. I would say they do a lot of things. They get to see a lot of places. They don't get a lot of like physical things or going out to eat. Like when they go out to eat, it's like, thank you, mom and dad. This is amazing. Cause that's kind of a special thing for them. If they want toys, like those are usually birthdays or they have to earn them, things like that. And we'll also talk to them a lot about money, like different things. Like, for example, there's a kid my oldest daughter just went to school and she does track. And one of the kids that she's faster than, by the way, it's so funny how it rubs you as a parent, like saw her shoes that were not new, that were like from last year. And he had brand new $150 like running shoes. It's a 10-year-old kid. And he's like, oh, you're wearing those shoes again this year? And Claire's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, well, I have new shoes. These are sweet. They're $150. I'm stoked I've got. And like, just in a really obnoxious way. And so we talk, like, we're very intentional about being like, breaking that down and being like, here's all the things that are wrong with this and why this is everyone listening, most people listening know, but what are you doing with your kids about like intentionally talking about money? What do you make them pay for? What kind of conversations are you having?
They don't have a lot of stuff. And maybe we're just lucky, but they like to read. So we'll walk into a bookstore and they're like, please, can we get this book, please? And I'm like, sure.
That's awesome.
They don't really want stuff. We spend all of our money on them on like volleyball, really. And that's where they spend all their time and all of our time. They're playing club and we travel all over the place. In terms of money, I think my daughter's just naturally frugal.
Yeah.
Maybe we rubbed off on her. My son is less frugal. Although, like, when he wants to buy something, we say, hey, would you still buy this if it was your own money and not ours? And that makes him think a little bit. But outside of that, we haven't really, my kids don't really spend that much money or even want to spend that much money.
How are you thinking about college with kids? Are you, like, from our perspective, we have college savings accounts for them. In the next year or two, we're going to make them start putting half of everything that they earn into an account for college and matching it. The way my parents did it, which I thought it was great, was they saved money for us, enough to pay for maybe half to maybe 60% of our college. And then the rest we were responsible for earning. So they contributed meaningfully toward it, but we had a big gap we had to fill as well. And then also anything that we saved, they would match and put into our college fund. So we made $100, they matched $100, put $200 in the college fund. So probably paid for about 30, maybe a third, maybe a quarter quarter to a third of my college, which I thought was a really good way to help out, but also have a lot of ownership for them. So how are you thinking about doing that with your kids?
I don't know if this is a cultural thing, but parents are expected to just pay for the entire college education.
Hmm.
Uh, I think all my friends are like that too, here who are Asian here. The only thing that we won't spend money on is their incidentals. So they have to earn their
Ah,
money during the summer for whatever spending money they want to have over the year. That's how my parents did with me, and I think that's how some of my friends who actually have kids in college now are doing it.
got it. That makes sense.
Because you don't
All
want
right.
them to like end school with all this debt, right? I don't know. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if you can help it, a lot of people have student debt, and sometimes it's often just the only way people can get through. But yeah, I mean, if you can, I think most parents, if they could help their kids not come out deeply in debt, it's a pretty big advantage to have coming out of the gates for sure. Um, I want to talk about something else here. Like so I mentioned you're a little bit older than I am, but you are, I consider you like a really healthy person, right? Like, you're just in shape, you're fit, you play sports, coming up on 50 here, that big 50, got a
I
couple years
know.
left.
Scary.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is crazy, but you wouldn't guess it. How do you how do you do that so well? I think a lot, like I said earlier, I think a lot of people would love to be in that position. So like, what do you emphasize to be as spry as you are as you're getting into your geriatric years here?
I wouldn't call myself spry, but one thing that I learned, and this happened back in 2014, is that the more in shape I am, the better I feel about myself and the more productive that I can be. So that's when I started putting more emphasis on it. I've actually always a lot of it's for vanity, I think. A lot of the times when I first started lifting way back in the day, I mean, I did it just for vanity, and then I've kept it up lifting. I've never really missed a workout for like the last 35 years. I just lift once a week. Yeah. And that's the way I am. Like I put something on the calendar and then
Yeah.
I just stick with it forever. And in fact, that's what my content schedule is like. That's my everything is on this like routine where I don't even think about it anymore.
It's just like you've got the superpower of consistency, which is
I
cool.
would say that's my superpower. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so lifting once a week. So did you have to build up to a plateau, and then once you got there, you just maintain and lift once a week, or like was there an initial big push for it, or has it always been once a week for 35 years?
When you're trying to gain weight and muscle, I was doing every other day in college. And then once I realized that gaining weight wasn't like what I wanted to do anymore, even if it was muscle, then I just sort of tailored it down. And that's what I'm talking about, that consistency. Like I know exactly what I need to maintain what I have. I don't want to gain weight. I don't necessarily want to lose weight. I'm at a good spot.
Yeah. And like for your diet, eat healthy. What's the there's so many different diets out there. What do you do?
I wouldn't say I eat all that healthy, but I am on a low carb diet, a very low carb diet. And again, this happened in 2014 when I don't know why it was always on my bucket list to get a six pack. And so I followed this guy's diet, and a lot of it was like cutting out the carbs. And I ended up losing like 35 pounds in like 4 months. I got that six pack, and then I realized that I couldn't maintain that because it's really hard to maintain a six pack.
Yeah.
So I found like a happy medium where, still got like maybe a faint outline of a six pack and then still feel good about it and it's maintainable and I can kind of eat mostly what I want, just not all the time.
So Jen had a glorious 2 or 3 weeks there until you
Yeah.
slid back into your slovenly ways.
Well, she did the laundry on my stomach for a little bit and she's like, nah, the washing machine works better.
No washing machines, no laundry machines or dishwashers. Um, so diet, and then you also, I mean, you work out, but then you also tennis, ultimate frisbee. One thing I've always found is it's easier, especially from a cardio perspective. It's so much easier to stay in shape if you're maybe it's just competitive personalities, but getting out, playing basketball, doing something where you get the competitive juices flowing. There's some camaraderie. Like it seems like that's been kind of the approach you've taken to cardio.
Yeah, I cannot run. Uh, When I'm not playing Ultimate, if I skip a week, I will go running, but I hate every minute of it. And I hate every minute during, let's just say. When I'm done, I feel great. It's just that during part that's really hard. So you're right. I just need to chase something. I'm like a dog. I need to chase a ball or a disc or something. Makes it a lot
1,000%.
easier.
I'm
Yeah.
exactly the same way. And the tennis, the coaching stuff, um, it's got to be fun to get to that point in your life. And because it seems like as we get older, the number of new things we take on, or at least things that we're trying to like actively improve in, um, unless you're super intentional, just naturally, I think you do fewer of those things. So has it been pretty satisfying getting a tennis coach, like actively working towards that?
I'm not sure what my goals are actually with my tennis, to be honest with you.
I
Number
know what your goal
one,
is. Your goal is
well,
to
my
just destroy me more and more every time we play.
well, okay. So my number one goal is I told my coach this was to just be able to beat all my friends, right, and be cocky about it. Like talk trash and still be able to like handily beat them. Uh, for a while, and this is kind of embarrassing to admit, but my friend has this daughter who's really good. Like she's been playing since she was age 4, and she's
Wow.
ranked and everything. But if you look at her, she's like 5 feet tall and really tiny. And for a while, my goal was to just be able to beat her. And I used to tell my tennis coach this, hey, she's coming to visit. My friend's coming to visit, and I'm going to play the
How,
daughter.
how old is
And
this daughter, Steve? Just for
well,
the
now
record.
she's 15. Okay,
How
but
old was
back
she
when
when you were trying to destroy her?
she was 13.
Oh my
So
goodness.
what was funny about this is that is that my coach was like, okay, we actually formulated a strategy because since she was only 5 feet tall, I would just do topspin, really high topspin to her backhand, in hopes that it would just bounce over her head. And I ended up beating her that one time, but now she's just too good. She's gotten older, bigger, and yeah,
You beat her one time, so
I beat her one time.
you beat the 13-year-old girl that you were stalking, and
See, I can't even brag about that. That's the problem. Like if I tell anyone, they just laugh at me.
no, that is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Um, anything else on the health front you think that you do that is really like? Do you do a lot of stretching?
I stretch now before I have to play anything.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing I take. I take glucosamine. I think that really helps for the
So,
joints. You
okay.
might have to do that later. I also take protein every morning, and these are things that are just good for recovery.
Yeah. Do you like do a protein shake? What do you do?
I do every single morning. I
Okay.
actually eat the vital proteins. You can get it at Costco. Uh, and again, part of this is vanity too, but because I heard that taking some of this stuff can help with hair loss too, because my hair's been thinning over the years. Maybe this will happen to you too, Andrew. I don't know, but
No, never. I'm
yeah.
sure this will never happen to me.
I mean, a lot of this stuff has to do with vanity in a way, right? Like you don't want to appear like you're growing older, and you're doing whatever you can to stop it. But
Well, I mean, everyone
yeah,
grows older. I think there's a fine line between like vanity, but also like you just feel better if you're in shape. If you're doing this kind of things, you feel so much better. Um, you're more productive. You're more alert. If you're more confident, you probably perform better in like any kind of situation. So there's a real fine line. Like, yeah, you can definitely go on the vain side of things, but I think there's also like some real health and lifestyle and just like performance facets to it as well.
honestly, I think it helps for business too, and I think more so for guys. Like when I see someone who's like a little bit more fit, I tend to have a little bit more respect for them right off the bat, right? And I think guys notice guys more than girls notice guys. Like if I see a guy, I'm like, "Hey, dude, you look pretty fit. Like, what is your regimen?" And I've been asked that too, and I think it just helps for everything in life, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Um, Steve, Seller Summit. Is it happening again this year?
It is happening this year. Uh, it's funny. We were just having this conversation before we hit record. I love doing that event. What I don't like doing is planning and all the work leading up to it. But once I'm there, I have the best time, and bringing a lot of people together feels really good. And presumably that's why you do ECF live, right?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
then it ends, and I'm like, yeah, let's do another one. But then, again, it's like this roller coaster ride that I have of emotions every year.
Yeah. It's so do you have the dates all locked in a contract and everything? For those that don't know, Seller Summit, it's a very intensive learning summit for e-commerce. You do it in Florida every year. Have you thought about mixing it up? Like it's always, or do you just got a place you like and you're sticking with it?
You know, I, we've talked about this actually. It is a lot of work to switch venues, and I admire you totally for doing that. My
Well, it's not
my
just
my
me.
event is just purely about networking and just hanging out and learning. I'm not sure, whereas you do experiences, which is cool. So I'm not sure what like the extra value add and the additional work it would take to just switch venues all the time versus what it is. I don't know. We've
Oh,
been doing it for 8 years now, so I don't know the answer to that question actually.
yeah. The venue switching is brutal. And have Audrey and others on the team help do a lot of the heavy lifting there. But yeah, I think the big sell for changing venues is you just get to go to a new city and a new place, right? Like if you go to the same place, if it's an amazing place, it's fun, but it's always fun going to a new place, checking out new restaurants, a new downtown, a new city. That's just it's kind of fun to mix it up.
For the most part, like at my event or most events I go to, you're usually in the hotel for a lot of the time, right? Sure, you get to go out to eat and that sort of thing, which is why I like ECF Live. Like you actually put together these pretty cool excursions where you actually get a chance to see the city. So I think for your event, it totally makes sense. For mine, maybe a little less so.
Yeah. So Seller Summit, um, you've got how's the book been? So I mean, I told you this earlier, and I feel given that you wrote the book, I should share this publicly. I don't know, I was working and I don't work an insane amount of things. I usually work probably pretty standard 40-hour week. There's exceptions
You
for
work
sure.
less than that, dude. But anyways, that's a subject for a different podcast.
I wish I'm trying to get better at it. Um, but I was working one day and my daughter came in and I think she was like, "Hey, can we go play right now?" And a lot of times I'll have them come in and play with them. But I was like, "Hey, I need to get this done. I'm sorry." And I think on my table I had the copy of the book that you sent me that was The Family First Entrepreneur. And I think as she was walking out, she saw it on the table and she kind of looked at it and picked it up and read it for a minute. And she's like, "Dad, you should really read this book. I think this book might be really exactly what you need to stop working so much and come hang out more." And I was like, "Thanks, Claire. You have no idea how deeply this cuts given the author here." So, but it's yeah, on the backside of that, it's a great we did an episode on it before, which we'll link up to, but a great book on like how you built a business focused on your family. How's everything been on the backside of the launch and hitting the Wall Street Journal bestseller list and everything?
Yeah, I think, and again, I kind of wrote the book so that my mom knows understands what I do, and a lot of that had to do with ego. Like I really wanted to hit the bestseller list and that sort of thing. And I really think that too much business advice is given out by bros who are single and have no responsibilities,
Yeah, it's
right?
true.
I
It's
mean,
true.
guys like us, we got families. We probably want to see them. Probably want to see our wives and that sort of thing. It doesn't make sense to work 80 hours a week. And I think you're living the life. I mean, you are. Even though you still like pretend to work 40 hours a week. I know you work a lot less, and the forum just prints money. But yeah, the book's been good. I think in terms of how it's affected my business, I'm getting a lot of more pitches for me to come on other people's podcasts and speaking
Mhm.
engagements, but I really don't have a desire to go on the speaking circuit, to be honest with you. So business wise, maybe it's good for lead gen, but I wouldn't say it's really boosted my business all that much. I don't know.
Yeah. But you're glad you did it. Like looking back, you
Oh,
would do it
fantastic.
again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like my mom understands books. She was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you wrote a book." And then I walked my kids through the bookstore. It's been in all the airport bookstores. I don't know if they still are, but they were in the beginning, when it first launched, which was pretty cool. My friends would see the book at the airports and send me pictures. It was very rewarding on a personal level.
Yeah. That's super cool. And Bumblebee Linens, how's things going over there?
Bumblebee Linens is good. So earlier this year, we bought a warehouse, which again allowed me to sleep at night because our rents were getting jacked up 30% a year, every
That's
single year.
crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, does the cap rate on that though, even if you're paying, what was the cap rate? If you were
Yeah.
going to turn around and rent that out, what would the effective cap rate
The
be on
cap
a
rate was
warehouse
about
space?
5%, which is okay.
Okay.
I don't know if it's great. But I mean, the whole point was peace of mind that we weren't having to move. Like moving is such a pain because we
Yeah.
got this warehouse, we got machines, big pain in the butt. We don't want to have to do that, worry about that again. And now that we're a little settled, we're starting a new line. We just got this DTF printer, and which will allow us to print a lot more and launch a whole new line of personalized linens. So I'm pretty excited.
That's cool. Anything different you're doing on the marketing front for Bumblebee? And how's business been this last year? Like, it's been a weird year in e-commerce. I know a lot of people are just paid acquisitions a little bit funky. Just demand is off a touch. Like, how's it been for you on both those fronts?
Yeah, Bumblebee Linens has been good. We're up for the year, and I would attribute that to a couple of things. A heavy focus on email and SMS. And then on the Amazon side, there's been a couple of tools that have really helped. Give a quick shout out to Brandon Young of Data Dive. He's got this really cool tool that helps you figure out which keywords and what order to place for your titles and your bullets for listings. And it turns out a lot of people aren't doing this correctly. So, what else have we done that's been really good?
Quick before you move on from that,
Yeah.
what's the correct order? Is it kind of standard SEO mentality that you would think is just putting it closest to the front of the title, or what's the algorithm there?
Yeah. So not only what you said matters, but it also matters which keywords and in what order and what priority. And a lot of people who do Amazon, they know which keywords that they want to use, but they're not sure which way to prioritize them and what is actually working for other sellers and what the gaps are that other people are not using. Like, what are some of the outlier keywords? And so that's what the tool helps with.
Huh. Okay. And what was the tool one more
Yeah.
time?
It's called Data Dive.
Data Dive.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Pretty new tool.
What are you using for SMS?
Postscript.
Postscript. Okay. And
Yeah.
on SMS, what's your strategy for, I mean, how are you driving most of the revenue there? Are you mostly just kind of blasting notifications of like sales or new products? Or are you trying to like actually engage with people in more of an informational way? That's harder on SMS, but what's your SMS strategy?
Okay, so SMS obviously costs money per send. So I'm usually a little bit more strategic. So if I'm going to send something, I want to make sure it actually generates revenue. So in terms of what you were just describing, I tend to use email for that because you can just send email willy-nilly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you can really, just to be straight up, I'm not sure what relationship you can have through SMS, because you're limited to a certain number of characters, and if you spend more than that, it actually multiplies in terms of the cost, right? As soon as you exceed, I can't remember what the number is, I think 160 characters, you're essentially paying 2 cents instead of 1 cent. And if you use graphics, you're paying 3 cents, right? So maybe that's a function of my frugality. Maybe I could be doing a better job if I'm willing to spend more money on it. But usually I try to make sure that it's ROI positive whenever I send.
Yeah. So are you mostly, what does that mean though? Does that mean mostly you're sending about sales or what's the most common thing you use for SMS?
Yeah. So sales, items back in stock, product highlights, deals of the day, that sort of thing.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, Steve, we're pushing an hour here. Anything else that we should chat about before we wrap this up?
I mean, we don't have time to discuss what you do on your day-to-day that can possibly fill 40 hours a week, but maybe I'll have you on my podcast to discuss that.
Man, it's funny. I actually use every day. I use something called Roam Research to organize a lot of thoughts and do planning. And so every day I'll make a list of what I do, and at the end of every day I have a list. And so I actually have an archived list of everything I have done every day for the last probably year. So yeah, we can definitely get into that.
I would love to see that list. Is it like sitting around and watching Netflix? Is that on there, or?
I mean, that's one of the few. I mean, Netflix. I cook a lot of like puddings. There's a lot of a lot of working on the van to keep it running. I mean, the busy days, man. Like, I mean, occasionally I'll come in, answer an email, record one podcast a week, and that's pretty much it. So,
I mean, you got a very competent staff. I mean, you got like Patrick. You have your event planner, Audrey. I mean, seriously, what's left?
No, there's actually, I mean, I know we joke about it, but it's actually a meaningful amount. Like, I mean, this week I'm recording like 12 podcasts, a bunch of those. So that's a full week. Like that pretty much takes the whole week for that week. Well, there's a lot of other things. Like we're working, like right now, we're developing an AI tool that we're going to be, hopefully will, good chance will be released by the time this comes out. So working with the developer team on how are we going to use that and be able to get all the e-commerce fuel information in there so you can interact with, I think like Chat GPT, but powered by all the information in the forms. So there's some things you want to be careful about with like PPI, personal identifying information, or PIIs. You want to think about privacy, but also speed and UX. So we're developing that. Hiring some new people. So thinking through those kind of things. We're moving over to ClickUp. Just talking with people, like events. Like we've got a couple events coming up. We've got one coming up in Austin, one in New York for Shopify. We have Ecom Camp coming up. So thinking about those, and there's a lot of details, even with the team that's fantastic, like structure, speakers, what else? All the standard stuff, accounting that you have, like kind of overhauling some of our processes. Man, there's always stuff like.
So this is what I'm hearing. Hey, Patrick, go figure out this AI thing. Just get back to me. Hey, Audrey, go plan all those other things and then just let me know what's going on. End of day.
I wish it was like that. They're amazing. I mean, I have an amazing team, but try to be a little bit more involved in that. But man, it sounds like a masochistic dream. It doesn't sound very exciting, but if you ever want to go through the whole list of my day-to-day checklists,
don't edit it now. Don't cheat. Yeah.
I'll just copy and paste everything and it'll make it look like I'm doing way more than I am. But it actually is helpful, like being able to track those things. I don't know if you're like this. I usually come to the end of the day and I'm like, oh my gosh, how is it 5 p.m. and how did I only get like halfway through the list that I had for today, or 2/3? The number of days I actually get through my list is pretty rare. So having a kind of a record of being able to go back and see what you're spending your time on, just traditional time tracking, is really helpful.
This is where we differ, actually. I only aim to finish 1 or 2 things every day.
Oh man.
Like I don't have this. I have a running list, but I only pick like 1 or 2 things to finish during the day, and I don't work on anything else.
That's really good. I mean, you work. Much. I mean, because I know that you tease me for only for not working, but your average work day is 3 or 4 hours. Is that fair?
It's a good 4 hours. I'm usually done by noon or 1 o'clock.
Yeah, that's super impressive. And I think part of that is like you talked earlier about consistency. Like you've been hyper consistent for a decade plus, but also you've intentionally built a business, maybe apart from Seller Summit, which I know takes a little more. It's like you said earlier, the only thing that stresses you out in your life. Like you've built a business very intentionally, in a way that, you can systematize. It doesn't have a huge team, and it is kind of in line with what you want to do with your life.
Yeah, but I'm probably not doing nearly as many things as you are. I mean, you got more irons in the fire than I do. So, there's trade-offs there.
Yeah, sure. There are. But I feel like that's one thing too I've been trying to think through is trying to do fewer things as well. Like it is really, man, the whole cliche of like focus, I wish I could go back and tell myself that 5 years ago. There's a ton of things I would probably not have done and just stuck to just one thing, because it's even looking at my marketing channels right now. Like I think about the podcast. I've been doing the podcast for 10 years and have never put videos up on YouTube, right? Like it takes a little time to set it up, to get a good video set up, to like get the flows where you put them in. But it just pains me to think if I had 500 episodes on YouTube, how much additional like just momentum that would have helped to build. And even other little things with some of our flows. I'm like, if I'm not maximizing the existing content and connections and what we're doing now, like why move on to these other things? I think we jump to new things so much more quickly. Like eCommerce Fuel podcast, this is not the Joe Rogan experience. It's not even close. It's not even a 1/10% of it in terms of impact, right? So like the amount the depth you can go with just that. So I've been thinking much more about narrowing things down and doing much less. And
I'm going to make you feel worse. So the YouTube channel makes enough just on ads to support the family.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Well,
YouTube,
the rest,
you can.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead and finish.
No. Ask your question.
For YouTube, I didn't realize this. So are you able to set how many ads? Like you can either have an ad for YouTube channel, or you can actually run ads and get part of the profits from those. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's just like AdSense. You just have YouTube put ads. You don't have to do any work. And in the niche that we're in, which is business, the payouts are very high. And people they're used to getting ads on YouTube. So it really doesn't disturb anyone, unlike a
Yeah.
blog.
Well, I guess my question though is, but you can say how many, are you able to, how much control do you have over if ads are shown and how many ads are shown on your channel?
You do have a knob that you can turn, but it's really up to YouTube whether they decide to display an ad in the spot that you decide to put it in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you've been doing
Yeah.
YouTube for what? 2 years, 3 years?
It's been, I started during the pandemic, so it's been almost 4 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you were saying the videos you were mentioning on the podcast that your lesser tactical episodes do better, like the ones that are super in depth, like, hey, let's walk through Google Analytics 4,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
do as well. Whereas
That's
the ones where you
correct.
talk about like more like this do better. Have you found that on YouTube as well?
Oh yeah, YouTube. You just can't do those types. I mean, you could, but they're never going to get that many views. It depends on whether you do we can do a whole episode on this. It depends on whether you're going for a search play or just, just like an audience play. YouTube, I tend to be more high level and not go into the nitty gritty. Yeah, you got to
Which
go broader.
actually, yeah. Where have you found, for someone, and that's speaking largely for myself here too, as I'm diving into YouTube, what's the best resource you've found to really learn about YouTube and YouTube marketing?
For me, it's been mastermind groups. I actually have a class where we teach that now. It's over at Profitable Audience. Happy to let you take a look. I mean, it's just basically a collection of everything that I've learned about YouTube, and it changes, but fundamentally the principles are all the same, right? You just got to keep people watching your entire video and get them to click on it. I just do it in
Profitable
a very low
audience.
energy way. Like I'm probably never going to be like a Mr. Beast, for example,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the amount
You're
of
way too cheap
effort
to be a
and
Mr. Beast.
I mean, it's more of a time thing actually. To do all that stuff,
Yeah.
you pretty much have to be all in full time. But for me, I'm actually happy where the channel's at. It's impacting people and it generates money and opportunities. And dude, you should totally do it.
Yeah.
Especially since you got the voice, arguably the face for YouTube, and
face for radio, as they say.
Yeah, you should totally do it. Yeah.
Steve, let's wrap it up, man. But 2 shout outs for your podcast, Profitable Audience. You do that with Tony, right?
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's made it a lot more fun, actually.
Yeah. So profitableaudience.com. Give a quick little overview for Profitable Audience and also for My Wife Quit Her Job, the podcast and blog over there.
Yeah, so the My Wife Quit Her Job podcast is an interview-based show, kind of like this one. But I also started doing solo episodes once a week because people wanted to see like a middle-aged Chinese guy just talk about philosophy and stuff. So I started doing that. They've been doing well. Profitable Audience is basically just me and Tony riffing about everything that we're working on. And it allows me to just act natural. Because usually when I interview someone, I'm kind of on my best behavior, you know? Whereas if you're just chatting with a friend, it's usually a lot easier.
Yeah, well, it's fun. I mean, that's one of the reasons I want to have you back on to do this is once you have a level of rapport with someone and you can just rip each other, you can ask kind of more probing questions. You can tease, like just rapport makes for better episodes when you've got a great co-host. So yeah. Awesome. Steve, thanks for coming on. Let me ask you all sorts of borderline and inappropriate questions about your age, fitness routine, money habits, all sorts of stuff.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. And make sure to check out profitableaudience.com and My Wife Quit Her Job podcast. And if you're into getting together, learning a ton about e-commerce, Seller Summit in Florida is always an amazing event. Fun to go down right on the beach and with a lot of great sellers. So Steve, thanks, man. It's always fun. Appreciate it.